All right, FBI investigation into Kavanaugh is out. It is not public, but the senators have seen it, and the White House has seen it. I want to talk to you about whether it was a trick, what the intent of the FBI was. I'll get to that at the end. I also want to tell you what they didn't look into, which is really important. Obviously, I'm in New York today and not on the show, and I wanted to give you this news as soon as I can. But make sure you check out the show where they'll have a lot of details tonight, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on tyt.com/live. Obviously, if you want all of our shows, make sure you sign up for membership at tyt.com/join. Get it commercial free anytime you want. All right, so let's get into it. So it turns out the FBI only reached out to 10 witnesses and only talked to 9 of the 10. Man, we wish it was better than that. And so who are the people they did not talk to? Well, it turns out there were a lot of people, dozens of people who reached out to the FBI saying that they either went to high school or to Yale with Kavanaugh or Ford or Ramirez, and that they had important stories to tell, and the FBI did not interview them. They also did not interview Kavanaugh. They also did not interview Blasey Ford herself. So these are pretty damning details. No, look, we asked for an FBI investigation. We knew all along that there was some chance that of course, what they were going to just do with it was to use it to whitewash Kavanaugh. We were hoping that the FBI would be honest and do it the right way. Whether they did is an open question at this point. And so let me give you the details so you can make up your own mind. So in terms of the 3 different things that they did not look into that witnesses are now talking to the press about, including the New Yorker, I think it's varying degrees. I'm going to say the first degree is not so bad. There's a bunch of witnesses who say, look, Kavanaugh drank a ton in high school and college, but we basically know that already. Then some witnesses saying he was a bully. So the whole time, that Ford was talking about how they were laughing at her while the attempted rape was going on. Somebody said that struck a chord with him. But look, you can't get into people's bad habits when they were 17. That alone is not enough, okay? It's New York with the sirens in the background. Anyway, it wouldn't be New York without the sirens. All right, so look, I hated bullies in high school, and I like to fight. So I if they picked on someone, I'd pick on them. And I try not to let people get away with that. The only reason I tell you that is because I want you to have the context. I don't empathize with Kavanaugh at all. I couldn't stand guys like him in high school. But, and then there's reports of, him bragging about sexual conquests and his buddies. Again, this is all really obnoxious stuff, but doesn't merit not getting on the Supreme Court, given that that was 35, 36 years ago, okay? So that's level 1. So level 2, so I'm not as concerned about that. Level 2 is people saying, oh no, I know he lied, but not about the sexual assault necessarily. So when they said Renata, the alumnius club, there's guys who said, I tried to tell the FBI, they talked about having, different sexual conquests with her all the time, including Kavanaugh. They sung songs about how they had, hooked up with her. And so the idea that they said that they knew this girl, Renata, and they all wrote about it in their yearbook because they really respected her, every witness says that's preposterous, not remotely true. And it's heartbreaking, it really is. They had reporters reach out to Renata again. Her last name used to be Schroeder, now it's Dolphin. And she says the same thing, it's heartbreaking. Why did they do that? I thought they liked me as a friend, and it turns out they'd been bragging all along about sexual conquest that didn't even happen. Again, we're not getting into guys lying about sexual conquest. If that was the issue overall, that's not going to block a Supreme Court nomination, okay? But the fact that he's lying under oath consistently, again, roommates, hallmates, classmates saying, no, Devil's Triangle, obviously. I heard him talking about it. Devil's Triangle all the time. It was a reference to sex. The over-the-top lies about his drinking habits, which were disastrous, and they always bragged about, etc. So did he perjure himself? There's apparently an enormous amount of witnesses saying, yes, he definitely committed perjury. some of the classmates saying, hey, listen, man, in the beginning I was in favor of him. But the way he kept saying that he was a choir boy and denying all the things that he did, no, he's clearly lying, right? So is perjury enough to block the Supreme Court nomination? Well, the Republicans said that perjury is bad enough they should impeach a president. This is not impeachment. This is one guy out of 330 million people in the country. He's applying for one of the most important positions in the country and perhaps even in the world. Do we have to give it to that one guy if we know for a fact that he's perjured himself on a number of occasions? So whether you think that's serious enough, again, decision for you to make, but most importantly, for a couple of senators to make, who are going to make that decision. Then finally, the last level, the most important one, is were there any corroborating witnesses that the FBI did not talk to about any of the sexual assaults? And it appears there are a couple. There's one minor one, I don't want to get too much into it from the New York piece, but there's a major one. Kenneth Appold. He's a professor at the Theological Seminary at Princeton. He was in the same hall and dorm as Kavanaugh. He says, yes, now he wasn't at the party, but he said, I'm 100% certain that people came up to me afterwards and talked about how Kavanaugh had taken out his genitalia and put it in the face of Ramirez. He's like, but I tried to tell the FBI wouldn't talk to me. He's like, look, I didn't want to talk in the beginning. I didn't want to give my name, and I wasn't against Kavanaugh's nomination even. He's like, but I know that incident happened. We all talked about it. And to me, the most troubling part is that the FBI didn't bother talking to him. For God's sake, now we're all doing speculation in the media. That's why we were supposed to have the FBI investigation. So you can go talk to witnesses like Apple and see, and more importantly, talk to the guy he said did see it. That guy does not want to talk on the record in the media. So you don't want to take a secondhand account, I get it. But that was supposed to be the point of the investigation. Talk to Apple, get the name of the guy, and he's willing to give the name of the guy, the reporters know it, who was at the party. Now that guy doesn't want to talk to reporters, but he'd have to talk to the FBI, but they didn't do that investigation. So now the question of intent. Look, are the guys at the FBI bad guys and who wanted to screw over Blasey Ford or the sexual assault survivors? No, I don't know that. Was it politically driven? I don't know that. But what I told you in the middle of this is the key part, is how much resources did the White House allow them to have? Did the Republicans allow them to have? Was it a real investigation or not a real investigation? And that part is political. So I said, look, it depends. Are they going to have 2 agents on it, 20 or 200? And it turns out they didn't have very many agents, and they were told not to talk to too many people. It's obvious. I mean, they just tried to talk to 10. That's it. And when there are these dozens of witnesses who want to talk about this situation, they didn't even talk to the 2 main people involved. Unfortunately, it appears that putting aside the intent of the FBI officials who did it, the intent of the politicians who limited the scope of the investigation was wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up. So what we got was a half-baked investigation. They did talk to Debbie Ramirez, the one from Yale, and she said half the questions were about, whether the Democrats put her up to it. Now, it's not unfair to ask those questions. You should ask both sides. But then you gotta follow up. She said she gave them names of potential witnesses, and they didn't go talk to them. Nah, that sounds like a sham investigation meant to whitewash this so the Republicans can say, see, we gave you an FBI investigation, and it quote-unquote cleared him. It did not clear him. That is not what happened here. And now McConnell says, even before it came out last night, he said, oh, we're voting on Friday. It's over. So now there's a couple of senators that'll decide which way this goes. But right now, it looks like the Republicans are going to look to put him in as early as tomorrow. So with all this hanging over his head, with all this uncertainty at a minimum, and the more I see, the less uncertain I am that he did it. But they're going to put him on the Supreme Court, it looks like. Man. He'll be on there for decades and decades. And that's the state of affairs right now in America. All right, that's your update.